When we think about the relationship between a narcissist and an empath, it's easy to reduce it to mere attraction or circumstance. But the truth is far more subtle, far more psychological. At the core of why narcissists can't resist empaths is the empath's innate ability to provide what the narcissist cannot generate on their own: emotional nourishment. Narcissists live in a paradox. They crave attention, validation, and admiration, yet they are profoundly disconnected from the internal resources that make this sustainable. They are, in a sense, emotionally hollow, and it is this hollowness that draws them to empaths, almost as if they sense unconsciously a source of sustenance that can momentarily fill the void. Empaths carry an extraordinary capacity to feel and reflect the emotional world around them. They can tune into subtle cues, unspoken feelings, and the hidden layers of someone else's experience. This is not just kindness or compassion. It is an almost biological sensitivity to the emotional environment. For a narcissist, who is structurally incapable of sustaining authentic self-esteem or genuine emotional intimacy, the empath is a living mirror. When an empath listens, when they respond with genuine attention, the narcissist experiences a sensation they rarely feel elsewhere: recognition. They are seen, they are understood, at least superficially. And this experience is intoxicating. But it's not merely about being seen in a conventional sense. Narcissists are drawn to the empath because the empath's openness bypasses their usual defenses. Most people, when confronted with the narcissist's bravado or manipulation, react with skepticism or resistance. The empath does not. They respond with curiosity, with receptivity, with an instinct to connect rather than defend. And this lack of resistance is paradoxically what fuels the narcissist's attachment. For the first time, the narcissist is interacting with someone whose energy is not trying to diminish them, who unconsciously validates their existence, and in doing so, feeds the narcissist's sense of importance. There is also a subtle, almost physiological element at play. Empaths create a kind of emotional resonance that is both calming and energizing. For the narcissist, whose internal state is often volatile, anxious, and insecure, this resonance is like a drug. It temporarily quiets the internal chaos and provides a sense of stability they cannot generate internally. But this is never permanent. The empath's presence is always corrective, reflective, and occasionally challenging. And it is this delicate balance of nourishment and subtle friction that the narcissist finds irresistible. They can neither fully possess it nor fully walk away from it. If we step back and look philosophically, there is a deeper pattern here. The narcissist's attraction to the empath is a story of incompleteness seeking completion. It is not a healthy dynamic, nor is it consciously navigated. It is unconscious, almost instinctual. They are drawn to what they lack most profoundly, and they are drawn to it in the person who is most willing to offer it, without asking for domination in return. The empath, by simply existing as a deeply attuned and emotionally responsive individual, becomes the gravitational center around which the narcissist orbits, often unaware of the subtle forces at play within themselves. And so, we see that this is not merely a personality quirk or a social preference. It is a psychological inevitability, arising from the interplay between emotional scarcity and emotional abundance. The empath, by virtue of their empathy, is a living contrast to the narcissist's deficit, a mirror, a source, a magnet. And in understanding this, we begin to see the fundamental truth. Narcissists do not resist empaths because of charm or coincidence, but because empaths meet a need the narcissist cannot meet themselves. Ultimately, the empath's presence reveals the paradox of narcissistic desire. The more they receive, the more they are drawn, yet the more they are reminded of their own inner emptiness. And that is the quiet, unavoidable gravity that keeps them tethered. The empath is not just attractive. They are necessary in a psychological sense to the narcissist's temporary sense of wholeness. When we examine the relationship between narcissists and empaths, one of the most compelling dynamics is the subtle, almost magnetic dance of control and submission. It is not obvious at first glance, because the attraction appears almost effortless, almost natural. But beneath this surface lies a psychological choreography, a pattern that repeats itself with startling predictability. Narcissists are drawn to empaths not simply because empaths are kind or attuned, but because empaths, by their very nature, create a space in which the narcissist can exercise influence without fear of reprisal, and yet also encounter emotional depth that challenges them in ways most people never would. Empaths do not approach relationships with calculation or manipulation. They approach them with openness, curiosity, and an instinct to connect. They feel deeply, they care profoundly, and they are willing to attune themselves to another person's needs, even when those needs are unconscious, hidden, or contradictory. For the narcissist, whose world is often rigidly structured around self-preservation and self-aggrandizement, this openness is disarming. It simultaneously invites control and resists it. The empath's willingness to listen and nurture allows the narcissist to assert influence, to lead the narrative, to feel central. Yet, because empaths possess an inner moral compass, an innate sense of their own boundaries, and an instinct for emotional truth, they do not submit blindly. They push back in subtle ways, sometimes through a quiet refusal, sometimes through a reflective question, or simply by maintaining an emotional honesty that cannot be coerced. This push and pull, the narcissist asserting, the empath responding, creates an almost hypnotic psychological rhythm. The narcissist experiences a surge of power in moments when they feel followed or validated, and then a subtle frustration when the empath's integrity or boundaries resist full domination. For the empath, there is a constant oscillation between giving and protecting, between empathy and self-preservation, and it is precisely this oscillation, the tension between influence and resistance, that becomes addictive for the narcissist. They are compelled not only by desire but by the need to test, to provoke, to feel alive through the emotional response of the empath. There is also a deeper philosophical dimension to this dynamic. The narcissist's drive to control is not merely about manipulation. It is an unconscious attempt to fill a profound internal emptiness, a void of selfhood that has never been nurtured or integrated. The empath, by existing as a fully present, emotional individual, offers the narcissist a mirror of what they lack: authenticity, connection, and depth. Yet, because the empath is not a passive vessel, the narcissist experiences a simultaneous sense of challenge and reward. Control is offered, denied, negotiated, and the narcissist becomes ensnared in the rhythm, unable to fully resist the attraction precisely because it mirrors their own need for completeness. In a sense, this dynamic is not just relational, it is almost existential. The narcissist is seeking not only attention, but a sense of being fully known, even if fleetingly. The empath provides the conditions for this to occur, but only in a measured, honest, and psychologically alive way. The interaction is both a reflection and a confrontation. The narcissist is drawn in by what they can control, and simultaneously reminded of the emotional depths they cannot fully grasp. And this is why the dance of control and submission is so compelling. It is not cruelty, nor mere manipulation that drives the attraction. It is a tension that speaks to the very structure of the narcissist's inner world. They are addicted to the rhythm of the empath's responsiveness, yet haunted by the very qualities that make the empath human: authenticity, integrity, and emotional depth. The narcissist cannot resist this dance, because it offers the illusion of mastery alongside the undeniable reality of their own incompleteness. In the end, the empath is never truly passive. Their openness, their sensitivity, and their subtle resistance create a gravitational field in which the narcissist spins endlessly. The dance is compelling, intoxicating, and above all, revealing, showing the narcissist the paradox they cannot escape. The closer they try to hold, the more they are reminded of what they lack, and the more irresistibly they are drawn back into the very tension they cannot resolve. Another layer of the magnetic pull between narcissists and empaths lies in the empath's innate ability to mirror the narcissist's ideal self. To understand this, we must recognize that narcissists live in a perpetual state of self-fragmentation. Beneath the exterior of confidence, charm, and control is a deep insecurity, a fractured sense of identity that has never been fully recognized, nurtured, or integrated. Their self-esteem is contingent, dependent on external validation, and their sense of worth is constantly in negotiation with the world. They need to be reflected back to themselves in ways that reassure them that they exist, that they are significant, and that they are admired. Empaths, often without intention or awareness, provide this reflection. When a narcissist interacts with an empath, they encounter a person who naturally reflects their desires, their dreams, and sometimes even their vulnerabilities. This is not about flattery or manipulation. The empath is not actively trying to inflate the narcissist's ego. Rather, through genuine attunement, empathy, and presence, they hold a mirror up to the narcissist's inner landscape. The empath sees and responds to the narcissist in ways that feel affirming. They acknowledge not just the surface persona, but also, at an unconscious level, the qualities the narcissist wishes to embody. For the narcissist, this reflection is intoxicating. It reassures them that their idealized self exists, even if only temporarily, and provides a fleeting sense of wholeness that is otherwise absent in their internal world. There is also a subtle tension inherent in this mirroring. The empath's reflection is honest and alive. They do not blindly agree or validate every projection the narcissist places upon them. Instead, the empath responds with nuanced perception. This honesty creates a rare form of engagement for the narcissist, one that both soothes and challenges them. It offers affirmation, yet it also gently signals where their self-perception may diverge from reality. In this tension, the narcissist experiences a psychological high, the thrill of recognition coupled with the subtle discomfort of authenticity. It is addictive precisely because it is simultaneously validating and illuminating. Philosophically, we can see this as a meeting of incompleteness and potential. The narcissist, fragmented and dependent on reflection, is drawn to the empath, who embodies the capacity to see fully and respond deeply. The empath, in turn, is drawn to the narcissist's surface energy, often unaware of the psychological machinery behind it. But for the narcissist, the empath is a living canvas onto which they unconsciously project the image of who they wish to be. And because the empath's perception is grounded in authenticity rather than flattery, the narcissist experiences a rare and powerful alignment. The idealized self, momentarily reinforced by someone who truly sees, in a human, nuanced way. This dynamic explains why narcissists find empaths so compelling. They are not simply attracted to charm, beauty, or kindness, though these qualities are present. They are attracted to the empath's capacity to bridge the gap between the narcissist's fractured reality and the fleeting perception of completeness. Empaths provide a mirror that is alive, emotionally attuned, and subtly boundary-aware, creating a resonance that other people rarely offer. The narcissist cannot resist, because this mirroring satisfies a deep psychological need, one that cannot be fulfilled by power, control, or superficial admiration alone. Ultimately, this is both revealing and paradoxical. The narcissist is drawn irresistibly to the empath because the empath confirms an ideal they themselves cannot sustain. Yet in experiencing this reflection, they are reminded of the gap between who they are and who they wish to be. The empath becomes, in a sense, both a source of temporary completeness and a subtle reminder of incompleteness. It is a tension that compels the narcissist, a gravitational pull that draws them back again and again, not out of conscious desire alone, but out of a structural need embedded deep within their psyche. And so we see the quiet, almost invisible power of the empath. They do not manipulate, they do not chase, yet their very presence acts as a mirror, reflecting the narcissist's ideal self and holding a space that the narcissist finds irresistible, inescapable, and profoundly revealing. To truly understand why narcissists are irresistibly drawn to empaths, we must look beyond surface attraction and recognize the profound role of psychological vulnerability and validation. Narcissists present an image of invulnerability, of confidence, of control. But this image is often a fragile construct, a mask carefully maintained to shield a deep sense of inadequacy. Beneath the polished exterior lies a pervasive emptiness, a psychological hunger that cannot be filled by power, success, or superficial admiration alone. What they crave most is validation that reaches the core of their being, even if they cannot admit it to themselves. Empaths almost instinctively provide this validation in a way that feels real, unforced, and nourishing. Empaths are wired to detect emotional nuance, to respond to unspoken needs, and to attune themselves to the emotional states of others. When a narcissist interacts with an empath, they are encountering someone who is sensitive to the subtle fractures in their facade, someone who instinctively meets them in the shadowed spaces of their psyche. For the narcissist, this is profoundly addictive. They feel seen in ways that are rare, almost miraculous, not merely admired for their success or charisma, but validated in their vulnerability, acknowledged in the parts of themselves they usually hide. The empath's validation acts like a mirror of psychological acceptance, offering a fleeting sense of wholeness that the narcissist cannot generate on their own. This dynamic is not superficial. It touches on the very architecture of the narcissist's inner world. Because their sense of self is externally contingent, they are dependent on others to confirm their worth. The empath, by offering attention, understanding, and subtle affirmation, provides a psychological scaffold the narcissist leans on. Unlike casual observers or acquaintances, the empath engages with sincerity, depth, and consistency. This creates a feedback loop. The narcissist gives attention and receives validation in return, temporarily soothing their inner void. It is a cycle of reinforcement that feels deeply satisfying and almost impossible to resist. Yet there is a paradox here. The empath's validation is never blind or uncritical. They respond in alignment with their own inner truth. This means the narcissist experiences attention. They are drawn to the empath's affirmation, yet they are also confronted by the integrity and emotional depth that the empath embodies. They cannot fully manipulate or dominate this presence without losing the very thing that makes it magnetic. In other words, the empath's authenticity is both the source of their appeal and a subtle corrective to the narcissist's self-delusions. The narcissist craves this duality, the reassurance of validation, tempered by the recognition that they cannot completely control or possess it. Philosophically, we might say that narcissists are seeking not just validation, but existential recognition. They are drawn to the empath because, on a subtle level, they sense that this person can acknowledge them without judgment, can witness the fragmented pieces of their psyche, and can provide the psychological acceptance that is otherwise inaccessible. This is not conscious. It is not a strategy they deliberate. It is an unconscious magnetic pull, a structural necessity arising from the deficit at the core of their selfhood. The empath, by being present, attuned, and emotionally responsive, provides a form of psychological nourishment that is impossible for the narcissist to resist, because it speaks directly to the hunger they cannot articulate. In the end, the empath's presence highlights a profound truth. Narcissists are addicted not merely to attention or control, but to authentic psychological resonance. They are drawn to empaths because empaths meet the need for validation in its deepest sense, acknowledging the narcissist's vulnerabilities, tolerating their contradictions, and reflecting a sense of worth that the narcissist cannot summon internally. And it is precisely this blend of affirmation and subtle challenge that create the compelling, almost gravitational pull. The empath does not manipulate, does not seek to fix, and does not surrender to delusions. Yet through their presence, they provide the validation the narcissist secretly craves, revealing the quiet paradox at the heart of narcissistic desire. The closer the narcissist is drawn to the empath, the more they are reminded of their own inner void, and the more irresistibly they return, time and again, to seek the psychological sustenance only an empath can provide. Another crucial factor in understanding why narcissists cannot resist empaths is the sheer intensity of emotional experience that empaths naturally generate. Empaths feel deeply, not selectively. They are attuned not only to their own emotions, but to the subtle currents of feeling around them. Every glance, every tone, every pause in conversation carries meaning. For a narcissist, whose own emotional life is often constricted or fragmented, this depth is both bewildering and irresistible. It is as if the empath carries an emotional gravity that pulls the narcissist in, demanding attention and stirring reactions that are hard to ignore. This emotional intensity is not a form of manipulation. It is an inherent feature of the empath's physiology and psychology. Their capacity for feeling is heightened, and their responsiveness creates an environment rich with stimulus. The narcissist, who is often emotionally numbed or defensive, finds themselves pulled into this richness. They experience highs they cannot manufacture themselves, a sense of aliveness, connection, and stimulation that is simultaneously thrilling and unsettling. It is precisely this unpredictability, this depth of feeling, that keeps the narcissist engaged. They are addicted to it not because it is necessarily pleasant all the time, but because it evokes in them a sense of vitality they rarely encounter. Elsewhere, there is also a paradoxical aspect to this attraction. Narcissists crave intensity, yet they fear vulnerability. The empath provides both simultaneously. They create emotional engagement without losing their own integrity, which means the narcissist is exposed to genuine human feeling, while also being reminded of what they themselves cannot sustain internally. Each interaction becomes a kind of emotional tightrope. The narcissist experiences exhilaration when the empath responds to their needs, or mirroring, and discomfort when confronted with the empath's boundaries or authenticity. This oscillation between stimulation and subtle challenge is deeply compelling. It is addictive precisely because it mirrors the narcissist's internal turbulence. The external intensity resonates with their internal instability, creating a feedback loop that they cannot resist. On a deeper psychological level, this emotional pull reflects the narcissist's unconscious desire to experience life fully without having to inhabit the vulnerability that comes with it. They are drawn to empaths because empaths live in feeling. They inhabit it fully, navigate it with grace, and convey it in ways that are impossible for the narcissist to replicate. Being near an empath allows the narcissist to vicariously experience the spectrum of human emotion, the highs, the lows, the subtlety of nuance, without having to integrate it into their own fractured self. And yet, because the empath is alive with feeling, they cannot be completely controlled, and they cannot be entirely possessed. The narcissist is constantly pulled back, both to satisfy their craving and to confront the limits of their own capacity for connection. Philosophically, we can see this as a meeting of absence and abundance. The narcissist embodies emotional scarcity, a life constrained by self-protection and disconnection. The empath embodies emotional abundance, a living presence of depth and awareness. When these two meet, the narcissist is drawn irresistibly toward the richness they cannot generate alone. The attraction is not merely personal or social. It is structural, rooted in the fundamental dynamics of need and resonance. Ultimately, the empath's intensity is both a gift and a mirror. It offers the narcissist a glimpse of life fully felt, while simultaneously revealing the limitations of their own emotional world. They are drawn to it, not by chance, but by necessity, compelled to engage with what they cannot create within themselves. It is this emotional gravity, this mixture of stimulation, challenge, and reflection, that keeps narcissists perpetually magnetized toward empaths. In the end, the empath's depth of feeling is the quiet, irresistible force that awakens the narcissist's longing, amplifies their desire, and, paradoxically, illuminates the very gaps in their own emotional existence. A tension they cannot escape, a pull they cannot resist, and a mirror they cannot look away from. There is a dimension to the narcissist-empath dynamic that often goes unnoticed, yet it is one of the most compelling forces at work. The unconscious desire for redemption. Narcissists, at their core, carry an unresolved sense of incompleteness, a wound that they may never fully articulate or even consciously recognize. They have learned, often early in life, that their self-worth is conditional, that mistakes are punished, and that their emotional reality is not fully accepted. This creates a deep, latent sense of moral and emotional deficiency, a sense that they are, in some essential way, flawed. And it is precisely this hidden need that draws them toward empaths, who embody qualities they have either denied or never fully developed: empathy, integrity, and moral steadiness. Empaths, by virtue of their openness and attunement, offer the narcissist a subtle form of validation that goes beyond superficial admiration. They hold the possibility of seeing the narcissist's full complexity, not just the confident, controlled persona, but the fractured, vulnerable self beneath. This is not about punishment or approval. It is about recognition. In the presence of an empath, the narcissist experiences a rare, almost intoxicating opportunity. The chance to feel acknowledged without judgment, to encounter the possibility of being enough as they are, even with all their contradictions. It is this unconscious allure, the quiet hope for emotional redemption, that makes empaths profoundly magnetic. Yet, There is a paradox here. The narcissist's desire for redemption is never fully conscious. They are rarely aware that they are seeking not just attention or validation, but a kind of psychic absolution, a temporary reconciliation with their own moral and emotional incompleteness. The empath cannot be possessed in this pursuit, cannot be fully molded to fit the narcissist's projections. And this limitation is precisely what heightens the narcissist's fascination. The empath's authenticity offers a mirror, one that reflects not only what the narcissist longs to be, but also what they are not. The presence of the empath becomes a challenge, a subtle but persistent reminder of the inner work the narcissist has avoided. And yet, it is this very challenge that creates the magnetic pull, the desire to be seen, acknowledged, and in some unconscious sense, redeemed to connection. Philosophically, we might understand this as a meeting of deficiency and potential. The narcissist embodies lack of self-compassion, lack of moral grounding, lack of authentic connection. The empath embodies the possibility of integration, of emotional clarity, of moral and psychological steadiness. When these two meet, the narcissist is drawn toward the empath as if toward a source of what they lack, not because the empath owes them anything, but because their own inner architecture compels them to seek it. The empath, in this sense, is not a savior, but a mirror of the redemption the narcissist longs for, a reflection of what they could be if they were capable of honest self-integration. There is also a subtle tension in this dynamic. The narcissist wants the empath's recognition and the sense of absolution it provides, yet they are unable to fully inhabit it themselves. They crave connection, yet fear intimacy. They desire acknowledgement, yet resist the vulnerability required to receive it fully. The empath, by existing authentically and holding their own boundaries, embodies a paradoxical presence, offering recognition without surrender, providing validation without loss of integrity. This tension, the push and pull between longing and limitation, is intoxicating, almost addictive, for the narcissist. It keeps them drawn to the empath repeatedly, even when the relationship is destabilizing or painful. Ultimately, the unconscious desire for redemption explains why empaths are uniquely magnetic to narcissists. The empath's very presence awakens a deep unspoken possibility, the chance to feel seen, to experience acknowledgement of the whole self, to touch, even fleetingly, a sense of emotional and moral completeness the narcissist cannot generate alone. The pull is irresistible because it speaks to the wound at the heart of the narcissist's psyche, a wound that longs not for conquest, but for recognition, reconciliation, and the elusive sense of being enough. And so, the empath becomes both a mirror and a possibility, a reminder of what the narcissist lacks, and a fleeting encounter with what they unconsciously yearn to achieve. It is this tension, this quiet par, AIOX, that binds them in ways they cannot fully understand or resist. Finally, we come to the inevitable push-pull, the dynamic tension that underlies the entire interaction between narcissists and empaths. This is the stage where the attraction, the intensity, and the psychological resonance collide with reality. The empath, by their very nature, maintains boundaries, emotional integrity, and self-awareness. The narcissist, drawn by need, desire, and unconscious longing, finds themselves facing a paradox. They crave the connection, the validation, the emotional depth, and the subtle redemption that the empath provides, but they cannot fully possess it, and they cannot fully control it. It is in this tension that the magnetic pull reaches its most compelling and psychologically revealing point. The push-pull is not merely about control versus resistance. It is deeper, structural, almost existential. The narcissist seeks closeness, yet fears exposure. They seek affirmation, yet dread accountability. They seek the empath's attunement, yet struggle with their own vulnerability. Every step forward is met with subtle friction, every advance tempered by the empath's boundaries or quiet refusal to surrender their own integrity. This tension generates a cycle that is both intoxicating and instructive. The narcissist is compelled to return again and again, caught between desire and impossibility, between the illusion of mastery and the reality of limitation. The empath's presence creates this dynamic almost effortlessly. They do not manipulate, chase, or consciously test. Their very authenticity, attentiveness, and emotional depth produce the conditions for the push-pull to emerge naturally. The narcissist in response, experiences a psychological oscillation: exhilaration when they feel in control, frustration when they encounter the empath's resistance, and an almost addictive compulsion to reconcile these contradictory feelings. This is the essence of the magnetic pull. The empath's integrity both invites and denies the narcissist, creating a dynamic that is impossible to resolve completely, and therefore impossible to resist. On a deeper level, this push-pull reveals the inner architecture of the narcissist's psyche. They are drawn to what they cannot fully have because what they cannot have highlights what they lack internally: self-sufficiency, emotional depth, integrity, and moral grounding. The empath embodies these qualities not through intention, but through being fully alive, attuned, and present. For the narcissist, the very qualities they seek are the qualities that elude them within themselves. And in encountering the empath, they are faced with both a reflection of their longing and a mirror of their incompleteness. This tension, this simultaneous attraction to and confrontation with what they cannot achieve, creates a gravitational field that keeps them returning, often unconsciously, to the empath. Philosophically, we can see this as a study in human longing and limitation. The narcissist's desire is never simple. It is entangled with fear, avoidance, and unconscious need. The empath's boundaries, authenticity, and attunement offer both possibility and constraint. This tension is the defining feature of their interaction. It is the psychological engine that drives the attraction, sustains the engagement, and ensures that the narcissist cannot fully disengage without confronting the gaps in their own selfhood. And yet, there is a liberating insight in this dynamic. The push-pull is not a trap, and the empath is not a victim of some mystical pull. It is a natural consequence of the interplay between scarcity and abundance, between inner emptiness and the presence of someone who embodies qualities the narcissist unconsciously craves. Understanding this allows us to see the magnetism clearly, without judgment or oversimplification, and to recognize that the cycle is as much about revealing psychological truth as it is about attraction. In the end, the empath's boundaries and authenticity are the quiet forces that create both resistance and draw. The narcissist is caught in a perpetual orbit, not because they consciously choose it, but because the push-pull mirrors the unresolved tension within themselves. The dynamic is compelling, revealing, and impossible to ignore. And the ultimate lesson, the one that leaves us with both clarity and resonance, is this: the empath's very presence, alive, attuned, and uncompromising, illuminates the narcissist's inner world, compelling them toward connection, while simultaneously reflecting the truths they cannot escape. The pull is not just emotional, it is existential, a mirror of what the narcissist lacks and a silent invitation to what they might one day, however fleetingly, become.